What is going on, everybody? Welcome to week 4. We are a week away from the buys. The injuries have started to already pile up. I hope that you are off to at least a 3-0 or 2-1 start. And yeah, we're going to get you prepared for another, what looks to be low-scoring, messy week 4 slate. What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
What's up, everybody? I am Graham Barfield, one of the co-owners here at Fantasy Points. Proud to bring another start-sit video to you. Thanks so much for checking these out every single week. As always, I write a free article over on the site, go through all of the starts and sits that highlights some of the best stats that I'm seeing from the Fantasy Points data suite. Just going through matchups, kind of looking at outlooks, not just on a weekly basis, but moving forward and stuff too. It's a long season. Don't ever forget that. It's a long season. Your teams are going to look a lot different than they do right now. And it is, scoring will eventually pick up. But right now it's pretty brutal. So let's get started. We'll get started at quarterback. Listen, I think we've nailed Justin Fields out of the gates, that this was going to be a low volume, slow paced, run heavy offense to start. Fields was going to have to earn the trust of the quarterback. As a quarterback, he's going to have to earn the trust of the coaches. I think he's kind of gotten there. Guys. Fields is getting the ball out a lot faster this season. His time to throw has been cut by nearly half a second. And that means a lot for him, because I think the biggest problem that Fields had last season was just not seeing it as well. Really, the biggest problem he had in Chicago was taking too many sacks and not seeing it well. That's not been the case, at least to start this season. And this is an amazing spot, man. The Colts are really struggling on defense. They're struggling with the pass rush. They're struggling with their secondary. Right now, the Colts are just 28th in pressure rate forced, and they're giving up a ton of passing production as a result. Nearly 16 passing fantasy points per game. That's not looking at rushing fantasy points. It's only passing. That's 7th most. This is a really good spot for Fields. Like him a lot. I think this is the week to kind of dust him off your bench. He hasn't finished as a top 10 fantasy quarterback yet, but this certainly feels like the right spot to play him in one quarterback leagues. All right, let's stay in the same game. We got to do it. We got to talk Anthony Richardson. There has been a lot of overreaction. I don't want to underreact, by the way. Let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, Anthony Richardson's like one of the least accurate quarterbacks in the game right now. Dead last in fantasy points data, off-target throw rate at 29%. Not great. He's also dead last in turnover-worthy throws. Listen, he's struggling, okay? This is not a good spot. Pittsburgh is awesome. Their defense is really good. TJ Watt is a game wrecker. They don't really have to blitz much because Watt is so good on his own. They're forcing the 3rd highest pressure rate and the 3rd lowest completion rate under expectation. Their secondary is playing really well too. Joey Porter Jr. is balling. I'm going to say, though, don't freak out and don't do something stupid and stream for Anthony Richardson this week. Give it one more week. The rushing has been down, and I think that's a huge part of the reason the last 2 weeks have been so skinny for him in fantasy. He doesn't have the rushing to kind of mask the really bad turnovers. The turnovers have been bad. However, I think this is a spot they go back to some of the design run games to try to offset that front 7 a little bit. They have to. They've got to get Richardson back in the design run game with JT, keep this game close. I think Richardson runs more this week than we've seen in the past couple of weeks, just because we know that's what their offense can do well right now. It's certainly not Richardson, making, 2 or 3 reads and getting out an accurate pass. Give it one more week with A-Rich. One more week. And if not, you can yell at me in the comments. That'll be the deal. One quarterback that listen, I don't think he's a sit this week. It's just I'm kind of concerned about this game. It's Brock Purdy. He might have Deebo Samuel back and George Kittle this week. Both Kittle and Deebo were at practice on Thursday. We'll see how that goes. The big concern for me is just the Patriots offense. Are they really going to push the Niners to do a lot of scoring in this one? Patriots have obviously given up some production as of late. They had a really good game in week 1 against, Bengals and Burrow, but last couple of weeks they've struggled. Geno Smith, 327 yards. Aaron Rodgers, 281 yards. Both those guys had 3 combined touchdowns. So it's definitely not a bad spot, but I am not seeing a ton of upside in this game, and we need Purdy to be pushed for him to really hit a big score. He's been good for fantasy, man. Purdy, since he's been a starter, he's finished as a top 15 fantasy quarterback in 75% of his starts. I think this is one to kind of shy away. All right, let's move on to running back. I've said it for the first couple of weeks. This has been like one of the most straightforward seasons at running back that I can remember. I think, once again, there are 20 by projections, just really kind of no-brainer plays. And as always, we'll sort through the kind of secondary RB2 pile, the ones that are, not so obvious to play. This week, though, let's go through the top real quick. These are the guys you just start putting in a lineup. I don't care if there's a fire. You put them in at your RB1. We'll get to the RB2s. Those guys are kind of lockish, too. Saquon Barkley, Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara, Jordan Mason. I think those guys are your lock button plays, followed by Devon Achane, John Taylor. I think Brian Robinson might be in this group. No Austin Eckler this week. Aaron Jones, really strong play, gets a revenge game going. Najee Harris does not have Jalen Warren this week. Really strong RB2 play. You can't take James Cook or James Conner out of lineups this week. Same goes for J.K. Dobbins. Okay. Then it gets a little interesting. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, both those guys, both linesbacks, great RB2 plays. Forgot about those two. Then it gets interesting. The volume has been really good for Josh Jacobs as of late. He lost a little bit of it to Emmanuel Wilson. Last week, LaFleur has always preferred a running back by committee, dating back to 2019 when he first took the job. The highest running back carry share a single back has had under LaFleur is 57%. That was Aaron Jones. So I do expect secondary back to get in play here, but Jacobs, even though he's probably not like a true bell cow, remains a really solid RB2. A few other running back twos I think this week that you just have to kind of plug into lineups. One is Zack Moss. This matchup's just too good. We don't really need to spend a whole lot of time on this one, but Panthers defensive line is really struggling, giving up the 5th most rushing yards per game. Hasn't really surprised me that Zack Moss is the early down back or the goal line back. I kind of expected that going into the season, that he'd get the first crack. What has surprised me, though, is Zack Moss has run way more routes than Chase Brown, 68 to 22 according to our charting team. Borderline bell cow usage in a great matchup. Bengals have a great team total. This is a pretty good spot to plug Moss in at RB2 or flex. Listen, it's been an awful start for the Jags offense, right? Just absolutely brutal. Beyond Trevor Lawrence's struggles, they're just a poorly coached team. The run game is vanilla, and it's really hurt Travis Etienne. I think Travis Etienne is a very good player, stuck on what's now a bottom 5 offense. He's been a bell cow, or kind of like a borderline bell cow, as I say. 60% of the snaps in 20 straight games dating back to last season. This is a really tough spot. I'm a little afraid for Etienne in this matchup. Texans are a great run defense. Once again, they gave up like no explosive plays last year. Same thing this year, giving up just 3.2 yards per carry. I think if you're in a full PPR league, Etienne's he's still like kind of a low end RB2, same in half, just because he gets the targets and the passing game usage to kind of bail us out. But man, it's really hard to get excited about Etienne this week, especially in this spot. Another play that's really hard to get excited about right now is Rachaad White. He's kind of just been an empty calorie RB2 to start the season. He's still getting 70% of the snaps. He's still getting all of the red zone work. However, Bucky Irving is just a better running back right now. I don't think it's really close. This was always my concern with Rachaad. Coming into the season, I was pretty concerned that he was bottom of the league, and you look at his kind of peers in terms of volume, bottom of the league in efficiency by yards after contact, missed tackles for, success rate. They draft Bucky Irving, who's very, very elusive. I think we saw it on display all season. We especially saw it on display last week against the Broncos. This has, red flags written all over it for White long term. Last week was a good matchup against the Broncos, and it was more of the same. I kind of was saying, give it one more week, and we'll see how it goes. And I'm pretty afraid for Rachaad White long term. Another good spot here. Eagles, run defense has regressed this season, but I think we have no choice but to downgrade White from, you kind of expect him to be a pretty good RB2 to, probably more of a flex play at this point. One final running back we got to talk about. I think Ken Walker is going to try to play this week. Obviously, you're checking injury reports on Friday and Saturday. He did. It looks like he's going to try to return this week. I think I'm sitting him, though, in a couple of spots that I have him. Lions are just a really good run defense right now. 2.8 yards per carry allowed coming into this one, and their front seven is going to give the Seahawks front some problems. Their offensive line outside of Charles Cross is struggling a little bit. Ken Walker coming back from the injury might be a little more limited. I'm going to give it a week before I plug Walker back into my lineups. I will say, if this were a better matchup, Walker can take 14 touches and go for 110 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. But the matchup is really what I'm most concerned about here. All right, let's keep it moving to receiver this week. It is an ugly week at receiver. Really fun week at running back. I think I said this last week, but it bears repeating. If you've got a flex decision between a running back and a receiver, especially right now, I'm just taking the projected volume. Give me the projected volume with the idea of a couple targets as well thrown in there. Right now pass rates are down. Passing is down in the NFL. Quarterback play is down. There's just not as many strong receiver plays. It kind of makes the top of the board, relatively more powerful, and kind of gives them some more power law upside. Whereas, these wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s in the middle of the board, it's going to be hard. Trust me. I write a weekly matchup column, and it has been hard parsing through, wide receiver 2s and 3s. But let's do it here. Diontae Johnson. Listen, I don't want a single question about Diontae in our final point show on Sunday with myself and John. He's just borderline must start. Listen, it's just amazing what competent quarterback play can do here. Veteran Andy Dalton just comes in and shreds the Raiders last week. Johnson just missed on a second touchdown in that game too. Dalton, maybe his only bad throw in that game. He threw it behind Johnson in the end zone. But we're taking the 8 for 122 and a touchdown after what we went through in weeks 1 and 2 with Bryce Young. Adam Thielen, he's out, missing the next 4 weeks with a hamstring injury. Johnson was already the first read 44% of the time last week. Yeah, he's just going to get spoon-fed the ball, man. Diontae is like borderline wide receiver 1 in PPR, really good wide receiver 2.5 this week. We'll keep it moving. T. Higgins didn't have the game that we wanted against Washington, but the role was there. I know we can't eat a roll, right? Like we can't feed our family with expected fantasy points. We got to get some actual fantasy points. I think we'll get it this week, though. Carolina, another good spot. Just like Washington last week, Carolina's boundary corners are not very good. J.C. Horn has really regressed. Carolina's given up the 7th most receiving yards to players aligned out wide. That's where T. Higgins spends most of his time at nearly 120 yards per game. Chase is playing more out of the slot. Higgins is going to get the more boundary alignment stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to go right back to him as a wide receiver 2 or 3. He earned 1 fewer first read than Jamar Chase last week. Higgins had 26% full-time role, like I said, 90% route share last week. If you drafted T. Higgins and you're not playing him as a wide receiver 2 or 3 this week, I'd love to see your team because, it's a brutal week at receiver. We'll keep it moving. One of my favorite wide receiver 2 plays this week is Christian Kirk. I know I was just kind of trashing the Jags offense, but I think the Texans just dust the Jags this week. I think they absolutely shred them. I think the Jags are going to have to throw a ton. And, Evan Ingram's going to miss another game with his hamstring injury. It kind of condenses the targets around Kirk and Brian Thomas. Last week, Kirk got 32% of the first reads. Thomas gets the better matchup here, and I think he's a pretty good wide receiver 3 play in his own right. Texans have given up the 7th most receiving yards to perimeter receivers, right there with Carolina. Thomas, really good receiver 3 play in PPR. I think Kirk is like a borderline wide receiver 2 in PPR this week. And it's just, I'm not excited about playing Jags, but I do think the receivers have quite a bit of merit this week. I would definitely play Brian Thomas over these 3 names. That's Michael Pittman, Cortland Sutton, and Jalen Waddle. All three of those guys are back on the sit list this week. We've kind of just been all over it with Pittman. It's not just the volume loss with Richardson and him struggling a little bit as a passer. It's, he might not be the top receiver on this team. Josh Downs came back from a high ankle injury last week, immediately earned 5 targets, immediately earned one more first read than Michael Pittman. And oh, by the way, he's doing it as like a part-time player out of the slot. Pittman's target competition we knew was going to be really good this season. I don't really see a path where I want to play Pittman this week. Like, he's going to get shadowed by Joey Porter Jr. Brutal week. One more, Cortland Sutton, just no-fly zone with DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner there with the Jets. I think the Jets get some pressure on Nix in this spot too. And it's just been brutal for Jalen Waddle in games that haven't been played by Tua or Teddy Bridgewater. Waddle's made 4 starts. He has 26, 23, 52, and 44 receiving yards. It's just not going to get it done, man. This offense had to go a little more pass heavy than we expected last week too, just because they got throttled by Seattle. But Waddle is like wide receiver 4, and I think Tyreek in our projections, he's like a wide receiver 3 this week. Okay, we got to do it. I'm sorry, I don't want to do it. We have to. We got to talk through tight ends. It's brutal out here, man. It's not just, like we've been talking about, it's not just the lowered production. It's now we're dealing with so many injuries. Sam Laporta didn't practice on Thursday with an ankle. It doesn't seem like he's going to play. If he does, he'll probably be very limited. Trey McBride, highly unlikely to play. He's in concussion protocol. George Kittle did get back to limited practice to start this week. He's 50-50 with that hamstring. Who really knows? David Njoku's still not practicing, as is Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram did not practice again on Thursday. So we have horrible volume in terms of just, passing in the NFL. Mostly pretty bad quarterback play. It's this is the worst I've ever seen tight end projections. I'm just still kind of shaking my head. At the top of the board this week, I think there are 4 must plays: Dallas Goedert, Jake Ferguson, Brock Bowers, and Travis Kelce. I know it's crazy thinking Travis Kelce is a must play at the position right now, given his lack of production. There's just been nothing there with Rashee Rice dominating targets, but no Derwin James this week, who's suspended. Does give Kelce a little bit of a matchup boost, and Kelce's just destroyed Los Angeles in his career. You just can't stream for him. I don't think you can stream for Dalton Kincaid either. He got the touchdown last week. I've been saying for a couple weeks now, just keep holding. The usage has been good. He's still kind of a part-time player, but I think, as the season goes along, he's going to be, him and Shakir have to be the top 2. And then from there, man, it's awful. My 4 favorite streamers this week, and I'm not excited about putting any of these guys in a lineup, trust me, but I have to. It's Dalton Schultz, Colby Parkinson, Zach Ertz, and Friermuth, Pat Friermuth. With the Texans and Schultz, it's really just taking Tank Dell out of the, off the field, really just kind of condenses things a little bit. He has just 3 and 5 targets through 3 games. That is not nearly enough to get it done, even in this landscape, but I think we can project a few extra looks coming his way this week. Schultz did average 10 PPR points per game in 7 games without Dell last season, which sounds incredible right now. 10 fantasy points at tight end sounds great. Obviously they didn't have Stephon Diggs last year. It's just a little bit of a boost for Schultz, who's been buried in our projections to start the season. Colby Parkinson, we can give him one more week as a streamer. Last week we were sitting him because it was a tough matchup against the 49ers. Fred Warner's just an eraser in the middle of the field. Niners are going to be so tough on tight ends all year. But Parkinson just really benefits from the thinning out of the Rams' injuries. No Cooper Kupp again, no Puka Nacua. And last week, Parkinson tied for the team lead, actually, with Tutu Atwell in targets with 5. I'm throwing my hands up here because we know Parkinson's going to be on the field. We know he'll probably get 5 to 6 targets. Maybe one of them's in the end zone, and Stafford's still playing really well. I think Parkinson's a fine back end tight end 1 streamer, as is Zach Ertz. Ertz has finished the tight end 16, 8, and 10 in weekly PPR scoring so far with no ceiling. it just kind of goes to show, though. I mean, those are usable games. He's got 2 top 10 performances this year, and Kelsey has 0. 4, 4, and 5 targets. I just think he's on the radar this week, as is Pat Friermuth. I do like the matchup for Friermuth. We do like Justin Fields. And maybe Friermuth is the add long-term here if he's on your waiver wire, but he's tied for 7th in route share. He's tied for 10th in target share amongst tight ends. And the Colts were really bad against tight ends last year. Gave up the 7th most receptions and 10th most yards to tight ends year ago. And they just got cleaned out by Cole Kmet. The ghost of Cole Kmet came back to haunt the Colts last week. No, but great game for Kmet. Can't take anything away from him. 10 for 97 and 1. Friermuth, Ertz don't have super high ceilings. I would say Schultz probably has the best one just because he's got the best quarterback. All of those guys are in play. I don't know what to do with Mark Andrews in the leagues I have him in. You can't drop him, obviously. I would stream for him if you have a bench spot, or just like, a 6th wide receiver you're stashing that you have like no chance of playing. And any of those 4 guys are on your waiver wire. I play him over Mark Andrews this week. I think he's hurt. I think I talked to Scott about this in DMs today. I was just like, yo, what's your read? And, he had the high ankle injury last year, which by all accounts, I think he was healthy from. But then he had this car accident. There's kind of weird reporting around it. He only played 33% of the snaps last week. And that was in a game where the Ravens were really run heavy and Andrews should be in there blocking. Something's up. My tinfoil hat is fully on, but for right now, I just don't think we really have a choice but to bench Andrews and Isaiah Likely too. I mean, his role has been all over the place. In week 1, I was like, wow, 60% route share. Maybe there's some pathway here. The Ravens have since tanked their 12 personnel. They don't play 2 tight ends as much. I guess they're playing Charlie Kohler and trying to block a little bit better. It's just this passing offense is it's truly a weekly deal, and right now Andrews is just absolutely buried in our projections because we don't have any confidence in his role. So again, I would stream those 4 tight ends we talked about over Andrews. I would go with probably Cole Kmet as well, and then it's just really thin. I think we just kind of have to eat it with Andrews and hope he gets into the end zone. I will say, for Mandrews holders, bag holders like me, this is a good spot if we want to hang our hat on something. The Bills play a ton of too high. It kind of forces everything in the middle of the field. But just after his role got cut down, he's just been a ghost in the offense. It is obviously hard to have any confidence. All right, that's going to do it. Thanks so much for hanging out. If you're not already, please subscribe to the channel. It means a ton. And make sure you like this video. It really does help us a lot. Appreciate you guys. And get to 4-0 this week. We're going to do it. We're going to get to 4-0. We're going to, combat the low scores and end at the top of the leaderboards. Good luck this week.